discuss The Glass Castle by Jeannette. I did a buddy read with Rachel over at the Shades of Orange, so I'll link her channel below. First, I want to talk about the story itself. I found this book both engrossing and maddening. It was well written and it was clearly structured to create the most emotional punch possible. Jeanette's story starts when she's 3 years old, and throughout her growing up, she is in several life-threatening situations. This is partly the time. It's the 70s. There was a more laid-back parenting style then. Kids were free to roam, get into trouble, and learn their own lessons. And it was partly her parents as people. Her dad is an alcoholic and is, often off getting drunk. And her mom, though she went to college and is trained to be a teacher, is an artist and spends her life living for herself and living for her art and doing very little parenting. Throughout the book, I just wanted to shake both of her parents. Whenever a story begins with somebody at 3 years old, I wonder, how much of this did you really remember? Of course, you're reconstructing dialogue and that kind of thing. I don't remember any full conversations ever in my life. So as I'm reading a memoir, I'm always mindful that it's a reconstruction. That brings me to the nature of memoir itself. In a memoir, you are telling your own story, you are turning your life into a story, and you get to choose what you want to reveal and what you want to conceal. With Wells, she was writing an expose of her own shocking past, living in true poverty. From the perspective of a well-to-do, well-educated, well-known woman, when I see a film or read a book about a real person, I end up looking them up afterward to find out more about them. And undoubtedly, I find there are things that were left out of the story. And of course, there's always reasons for leaving things out. They left something out because it didn't fit the kind of story that they wanted to tell, or the picture of the person that they wanted to present. And then my opinion of that person comes down a few notches. First, simply because they didn't tell the whole truth. And I feel, however unjust it is of me to feel this way, that they didn't tell me the whole story. They weren't honest with me. I kind of take it personally. In The Glass Castle, Walls carefully avoids giving very much detail about her current profession, and it's probably because that's not the focus of the story. But it turns out she's pretty much a gossip columnist, which is really surprising for somebody who fought their way out of poverty to go to an Ivy League school and study journalism, that she would end up in the kind of career she ended up in. And that she leaves this part out of the narrative makes me feel like she is a little bit not proud of where she ended up. I want her to acknowledge that and explain how she got where she is and why she stayed in the position. Reflecting on this book and on memoir in general brought to mind the book Night by Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel is a Holocaust survivor and has written extensively about his experiences. And if I remember correctly from my college days, the story of Night was first published, I think, in installments in a newspaper, and then years later he rewrote it as a book in its entirety. If you compare the two versions, there are several discrepancies, and one of them is his age. In the second version of Night, he made himself younger than he actually was at the time that he was in a camp with his dad. But perhaps for Wiesel, maybe he simply didn't remember how old he was, or maybe he made himself younger on purpose because that age was closer to how he felt at the time. Maybe it's more of an emotional truth than an actual truth. Should memoirists be as true to actual events as they can, or do they have the right to tweak things from their own lives to present the story they want? How much license do they have to create the story they want and still call it a memoir? Do your feelings about someone change if you research them after reading the book or seeing the movie? What are your feelings about the nature of memoir? Thanks for watching.